Following that, we had the provisional KOPW title match as Great Okan successfully defends the title against Suzu Suzuki. And this was a hardcore match, so yeah, anything goes. And if Okan were to lose, they would have had to shave their hair and beard.
Yep. That was the stipulation, and he felt he didn't need to use the weapons, but he eventually changes his tune.
Yeah, when this obviously like Suzu Suzuki, she has a reputation. She's not one that's shy from the violence or hardcore matches. But when she first walked out and I saw the board with forks, I didn't get a full like look at it. So I didn't realize that it was just styrofoam and plastic forks. I thought like we were going full on deathmatch, and I was like, oh, okay, like we're doing this right now. But it was this, it was a proximity to a death match. It wasn't quite that, but I thought this match, aside from one part of it, was pretty fucking awesome, actually.
So my thing with Suzu is that she used to be part of a 5-girl group called Prominence, and they all used to be in Ice Ribbon. They all left Ice Ribbon at the same time. They invaded Stardom. They went after Julia, and then Suzu stayed and got signed by Stardom after winning the 5-star Grand Prix. Now, she's had some great death matches. I've actually watched some of them, and I'm not a death match girly, but Homegirl has fought Jun Kasai before and been like covered in blood. What I've realized with New Japan and Stardom, their hardcore match and death match pretty much tells you whether or not there's going to be blood. So when she walked out with plastic forks, I was like, okay, we're pastel plastic forks because she's in a very baby face, colorful girl faction. But it was funny seeing all of her stablemates in like black Suzu Suzuki deathmatch tour t-shirts. But it was I liked this match a lot, except for one spot in the match because it didn't need to go down that way, because I've never seen anyone in any match with Suzu ever have to resort to that as a tactic.
Yeah, I believe you're talking about Great Okan getting the old thumb and shoving it up where the sun don't shine. And not only did he do that, he then pulled it out and put it in his mouth.
I mean, I don't want to get like too graphic here, but like it wasn't even entirely clear where he put it.
That's my problem with it. It came off a little non-con, you know what. It starts with an R and it sounds like a fruit.
Yeah, it was very SA to me, you know. And then the thing he did after it, you know, where I don't know what he did. Like I can't really even quite recall, but it was gross. It was fucking really.
He put it in he sniffed it, put it in his mouth.
That's what I was gonna say. I couldn't remember which one he did.
It looked like he was getting off on it, and I was like, no.
Yeah, like a lot of wrestlers have, you know, they have like the freedom to kind of express themselves in the ring, and you know, by and large, they're allowed to kind of get away with certain things. But this was something where I was like, I don't know, man. That's like really kind of crossing the line. But
yeah,
there's a lot of, you know, it's different when it's a mixed tag, I suppose. But there's a lot of like men's matches in Japan where, as a comedy spot, they do the fingers up the butt and everything. And I don't know. That humor doesn't really translate with me. I don't know if it's a thing over there. I've seen it in some anime, so I don't know.
Well, you're probably thinking of. I actually had to explain this yesterday over at Post. You're thinking of the Concho, which you've probably also seen on New Japan Program. Yes, it's the your finger guns. Where's the church? Where's the steeple? And it's usually just a straight shot into the butt. Usually, boys do it to other boys in the playground. You don't normally have someone doing it to someone of the opposite sex, especially in a venue where you have children. In a wrestling thing where it's already, there's in Japan, there's especially with Stardom and New Japan, there is that like kind of like some people wanted to see this, some people didn't want to see this. It was probably not the best move to present in a match when there's children, and Stardom is really trying to bolster their number of female fans, especially younger female fans. So this probably wasn't the move. It sucks because for the most part, I enjoyed seeing Suzu Suzuki terrorizing Jeff Cobb and Callum Newman. They looked like they were afraid of her as opposed to concerned about Great O'Connor with the trash can on his head. But for the most part, it was I liked that the girls in Neo Genesis actually got in the ring when they were trying to do the ladder spot, because you know how I feel about ladder spots, that when there's not enough good base on it. But it was I really wish that, Jeff and Callum, and I think Francesco Chiara was out there also, that they kind of did more of the seconding as opposed to looking very confused as to why, the baby face girls are feeding Suzu weapons and sliding in the fork board when no one's looking. So it was I feel like it was a missed opportunity, but the match for the most minus that one part, I really liked it.
Yeah, and one last thing on the thumb, it might be a link back to Okan's amateur wrestling background. So in amateur wrestling lore, there's this thing that's called the oil check, where you get the thumb and you jam it up there to get the advantage. I'll say I've never done the oil check in my amateur wrestling days, but it was lore that we heard about. So maybe Okan that's what he was doing there. But besides that's
food for thought moving forward. Maybe don't do that in a mixed tag match with children in the audience.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of like intergender wrestling. Like, I feel like it works on one of 3 levels.
Yeah.
One is like for the type of indie wrestling fan who they're kind of like, they like to be on the inside. They don't care whether like believability is applied. Like it's more of like a niche hobby, and they just enjoy it for the artistry of what it is. Oftentimes there's either going to be a deathmatch element or like a comedy element. For me, oftentimes that doesn't totally work because it's hard for me to suspend my sense of disbelief. Plus there's already like that divide between like different divisions. So it's hard for me to kind of get in on it. But then sometimes there's the spectacle, which is what this was. And then there's other times where there are certain kayfabes where there's like, for instance, in Lucha Underground, the kayfabe was none of this is real. It's all like supernatural and everyone's got superpowers. And I was like, okay, I can understand Sexy Star being up Pentagon because there's a logical kayfabe explanation, and that sort of works for me. But most of the time, I'm not the biggest fan of intergender wrestling. But this one being like a standalone spectacle, and the introduction of the weapons as almost being sort of a like playing field leveler, and kind of playing more into Suzu Suzuki's wheelhouse than Great O'Con's, and them telling the story of every time she tried to deviate from her game plan and tried to wrestle with Okan. It didn't work out so well, but Okan really struggled to acclimate to, basically working within the confines of the weapons. And then how into it the crowd got, it really started to become pretty compelling for me, to where I wanted Suzu Suzuki to beat this dude and take the KOPW title. And I don't know if that meant she was going to like defend it in New Japan or take it away. And now it's just, property of Stardom, a la the IWGP Women's title. I don't know which way that was supposed to work, but I was enjoying this match for the most part.
I think the only thing that would have helped people understand Suzu's the gravitas of what deep her deathmatch roots go is probably a broadcast thing where they probably couldn't get stuff off of Wrestle Universe, because that's where Prominence usually screens all of their shows. But I wish they could have done like a very short, tiny video package showing how far Suzu can actually go, because I feel like it would have, for those who aren't familiar with her work or her work in like they've only know of what she's done in Stardom, I think it would have helped be like, oh, maybe she can beat Great O'Con. Maybe this is the only way that she can probably take it away from him is, bloodying up and throw him in an ambulance. But again, I guess they weren't going to do blood, so they probably didn't want to show how some of the most captivating photos I've seen of Suzu's where she's just covered from like razor blade cuts and glass sticking out of her.
Yeah, and kind of I was thinking like Josh too, like when the Board of Forks first came out, like, oh, here we go. Yeah, this is gonna be like crazy. I mean, there were a lot of crazy spots. They did end up using the Board of Forks set up on 2 chairs, and Okan eventually did the eliminator off the ladder to Suzu through the Board of Forks. You had some staple gun action. Suzu stapled the question mark thing to herself first. And then she started using the staple gun on O-Khan. He stapled O-Khan in the crotch multiple times. So a little revenge there for the thumb spot. And so, yeah, they were wild out doing some crazy spots. At one point, O-Khan did the butterfly suplex to her on the stage. So there was like a lot of crazy fun spots that they were doing in this hardcore match. And ultimately, Great O-Khan would get the win and retain the KOPW Provisional Championship. So it seems like he'll probably maybe have one more defense in December, probably in the Road Tokyo Dome, and he could be ending the year as the official 2024 KOPW.
One last thing I would like to say. This match was really a standout match, but I did feel personally, and I'm not usually one, like, I'm not like a virtue signaler or anything like that, but I thought that spot was enough to cross the line to where like management should step in and probably do something, because it was really, really, like, it wasn't just the spot, but the gesture afterwards was like, especially for New Japan and Stardom, like just way over the line. Like I was really shocked.
I mean, I was already uncomfortable with Taguchi putting his hands down his pants to kind of get like the stink palm going.
Yeah, that was fucking weird too. I forgot about that.
You stepped away from that part of the discourse. But yeah, between that and the thumb, I was just like, this is not how you get people into watching a product that you may be new to, or you actually enjoy, and you're like, that kind of cheapens the whole thing.
Yeah. And I'm curious about your opinion in intergender in general, because like I was watching this and like my wife saw like the pre-match, the VTR of the press conference where like O-Khan's like bashing Suzu's head on the table.
Oh,
so like,
yeah.
wait, she's like, what is happening? Why is this? What is this man on woman violence? Why are we, trying to promote that? And so obviously my wife's not a huge wrestling fan, and sometimes she forgets, it's a work, and like, yeah, these are trained professional men and women. But I guess from a woman's perspective that is a wrestling fan, what do you think about it?
Well, I mean, I actually, like, when WWE did their mixed match challenge a few years back, I really got into it, especially, and I enjoy intergender wrestling when it's done in a way where everyone's, I guess, protected and done safely, or that it's not like the match is done to forward everyone's storyline and everyone has agency in the match. Like if we want to go back a few years, back when Will Ospreay gave B Priestley that cutter to show Ibushi how serious he was, and it really felt like B was just collateral damage. Like that version of using intergender wrestling makes me uncomfortable, because it felt like at that time there's like she had no agency. She was just a plot point in a storyline, as opposed to her making this whole like to do like, oh, I'm gonna leave you, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna that, and then he gives it, okay, fine, they made a choice, they had a fight, whatever. Same thing goes with historic crossover. Like the first one I really enjoyed, but it was also the matchups that were involved, where it's the the whole like 5 seconds between a tag, anything's fair game. This time around, the referees seem to have a very difficult time on paying attention as to what's going on in the ring.
They didn't see shit.
They were more concerned about like what was like for sale at the concession stand half the time, because people got away with a lot more this time around. The matches that we're about to get into, I have a very positive outlook on how a lot of it was done, because it made sense, and the way that it was presented was that no one looked like they were in danger. It was, yes, I know they're all professionals, but it was you could tell that a lot of the wrestlers, even like I go back to Joe Maloney and Gabe Kidd, yes, they were doing their usual, oh, I'm a bad guy, this and that and that, but they did like same thing with Clark and Taichi. They do so much that they they'll sell a lot to make the match feel credible and feel like, oh my gosh, could this actually happen? But at the same time, it's I never felt concerned for the safety of any of the women in the matches. With some of the non-con things like the oil check, kind of made me feel kind of icky, yes, but for the most part, I enjoyed this show because it found a good balance on what should and shouldn't be done in a match for the most part.